Here's everything you need to know about how elections affect the real estate market. I get asked in election years, so do we need to worry about the election this year and how that's going to impact prices or mortgage rates? If you just think about common sense, you would think that an election is certainly going to have an impact on what happens with real estate. In fact, a lot of people believe this time of year that a homeowner or a potential homeowner is going to have second thoughts about whether or not they want to move right now. After all, there's an election coming up in just a few months. Statistically, the facts do not bear that out. In fact, housing markets tend to go through election years just about identically to how they go through the non-election years. You would think people would be worried about, is one candidate or another candidate going to win? Is the Senate or the House of Representatives going to flip control? And if that happens, how's it going to impact policies that are related to housing? Well, people certainly ask those questions. They certainly have those conversations, and they even ask questions like that of their loan officer. But I can tell you through my experience in 22 years of doing this, that very few people actually allow the answers to those questions to impact the speed at which they move into the housing hunt. Most of the time, people are buying a home because some life event required them or encouraged them to do so. For instance, they're having a child, or they need to get in a better school system, or they got a promotion and got a raise, or they want to be closer to parents, or they want to be closer to kids and grandkids, or their job moves them to a new city. All those factors are unique, and they're all, in the end, more important than what someone speculates is going to happen on the economy. So if you're thinking about the housing market in general and you're wondering, is now the right time to list my house for sale, or are things going to slow down for the election? Statistics would tell you things are not going to slow down, and you really shouldn't consider that as a factor. But what about rates? What about mortgage rates? How are mortgage rates impacted? Surely whoever is in charge of our government is using mortgage rates as a tool to try to help themselves get reelected. We actually hear this argument a lot. We hear this conversation a lot. And a lot of people, again, using conventional wisdom, think, yeah, I mean, whoever's in charge is going to try to manipulate rates because lower rates will make people feel better about the current situation, and they'll be more likely to vote for the incumbent. Again, the facts do not support that. For one thing, our mortgage rates are not set by our politicians. Well, Michael, but the politicians appoint people in charge of certain areas that have a greater influence over rates like the Federal Reserve. And that's true. They do appoint or assign those positions to individuals. But our Federal Reserve operates outside of the world of politics. Now, a skeptic is going to say, maybe that's true, but if you were appointed by the person who's currently sitting in the White House, then you're going to feel obligated to make decisions that help them continue to stay in the White House. That's one of the reasons that that doesn't come into play, is because that one individual doesn't control what happens with the Federal Reserve. There's an entire Federal Reserve Board made up of a lot of different individuals. Yes, they're appointed by different people, but in the end, they're weighing economic factors, not political factors. So even with the Federal Reserve, when someone says, oh, the Fed's going to cut rates, the Fed is not cutting the mortgage rates. The Fed is cutting the Fed funds rate, which is the rate at which banks lend money to each other overnight. That is our base rate, and it does impact all the other rates, but the overall economy is what primarily drives mortgage rates. So for a politician in particular, especially just a single politician, to be able to manipulate the machine in such a way that our markets and the people who are investing money are manipulated into making certain things happen so that an election can swing one way or another, it's just unrealistically something that people think of, and it does make sense, but it simply doesn't happen that way. So if it's this year and it's an election year and you're thinking, well, maybe I need to put my housing search on hold because I'm uncertain about what the future holds for our housing policy based on the politicians that are going to get elected, I would tell you, if you do that, you're always going to have your house hunt on hold. Instead, you need to refocus, think about the reason that you're looking at buying, and prioritize that reason in your mindset for why you should go ahead and move forward now. So when I get asked the question, is the housing market or our mortgage rates impacted in an election year by the politicians? I would tell you the answer to that is no. And your line of thinking needs to be, what is going to put my family in the best living position that it can be in for the future beginning today? If you have questions or you want to talk through those things, it's a simple phone call to call Weber Mortgage. We'll be happy to walk you through the factors that we know can impact your decision.